What's up, fam? Welcome back to the Two Goats Show. We're your hosts, Mariah and Steph. Today we're joined by a very special guest, Coach Desi. What's up, ladies? How are you guys doing?
All good in the hood. How are you guys?
Doing great. Happy Thursday. Good to see you, Steph. Good to be back on with you. Hope you've had a great week. Um, but yeah, I have a lot of good questions. Hope they're good questions for Coach Desi. Get the medical, expertise on this stuff. Before we get into that, though, why don't you talk to us a little bit about just how you became a 49ers fan and kind of your 49ers fandom?
I was just born that way. Plain and
Love
simple.
it.
My mom was a football fan. I was raised by a single mom, and so she was the one who brought football into our house. And
Awesome.
she was a Steelers fan and a 49er fan. And back in those days, the Steelers were big time, and they were the team to beat. And the 49ers really weren't a whole lot of anything. But then the excitement of Joe Montana, the catch, all of that happened, and watching that dynasty was just very left a big impression on me, and that was it. Signed, sealed, delivered, always and forever. A diehard 49er fan.
I love that. I love that. Especially me, like, because my whole family is Eagles fan, so I definitely wasn't born into it. So I'm like always so jealous, I guess, of people that have, that they get to be a 49ers fan from the time they were little, and got to like live all those moments. Like I didn't become a 49ers fan until I was old enough to make a decision and know to teach myself about football and all that. So I missed out, on those younger times, I feel like. So I love that you were born that way.
Yes.
So let's get into kind of this team. I was thinking about it when I was making my notes, and I'm like, we've kind of been luckier this season so far on the injury front. Knock on wood, right? Because even though we've had some scary, injuries, obviously with Trent, a big one, obviously missing Debo for a few games, but nothing too, I was like, what good injury questions do we have? And I'm like, man, the 49ers so far so good on this front. But let's kind of talk about Trent Williams, because I guess that's obviously like a big one that's happening right now. And I think when they first announced about his ankle sprain, Kyle seemed optimistic about it. Okay, it's not a high, he should be okay. And then it kind of seemed like, okay, well, he's still not practicing. Something just doesn't seem right. Like we first come right back after the bye and he still didn't practice, that first day. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't seem right. And Kyle kind of talked about it and said, well, Trent's had multiple injuries in that same area. So now, yes, it was a low ankle sprain, but it's like a low ankle sprain plus because of all those previous injuries that he's had. So can you kind of talk to us a little bit about that? Is it like because he has scar tissue? Is it what makes that, happen that way? And what do you think, like, does that, because it seems like obviously Trent, we haven't got a full season out of Trent, right? Like I before the season even starts, like I just plan on Trent missing like 3 to 5 games, at least of the season. So you think that this is something that is going to shorten his career even more? Like, how are you feeling about Trent's ankle foot situation?
I love Trent, and it makes me probably really sad when I start to talk about his, where he is in his career, because it's a tough spot. He's 13 years in. I mean, that's a long time. I feel like we're kind of already at borrowed time, so to speak. I feel like for sure, next draft, we need to start looking at what might a backup look like. And he is irreplaceable. He is a pillar. When he and Debo were out, I just felt like it's so hard to get anything else happening, especially for Christian McCaffrey when he is not there. In terms of his injury, so when I looked at his injury, it looks like so there's the outside part of the ankle, which is called the lateral part. There's the inside part of the leg of the ankle, which is called the medial aspect. His injury happened, I believe, on the medial side, which is not where one typically, when we talk about sprained ankles, most people say, I rolled it, and they rolled it to the outside, and it's an outside lateral ankle sprain. But for him, it was more of a medial one. So that's not super common. It's a larger wider band of tissue there that supports the inside part of the ankle. And so he is a little flat-footed. So I think he was kind of used to maybe rolling that in, and that's where the recurrence comes from. Anytime you have an injury, there's different grades of sprains. So there's a grade 1, a grade 2, a grade 3. So even though, people say, oh, it's just a sprain, and even though 49ers came out in initial reports where it was not a high ankle sprain, you can still have a grade 2 and a grade 3. A grade 3 is so terrible that most people are like, I'd rather just have a broken ankle. Like, I'd rather just break a bone because it takes even longer and it's tougher to heal from. So if you don't rehab these things properly, you can always have recurrent injuries. And there's a lot happening in his foot and ankle. And again, with him being a little bit more flat-footed, he pronates. And so that ankle just constantly has stress more on the inside part of the ankle. So it's kind of how he's built. And then anytime you have recurrent injuries, you tear a little bit with sprains, even though it's not a full tear, although it can get up to that. Any kind of tears is replaced by scar tissue, and scar tissue is just not very forgiving, and it's very easy to kind of tear or re-injure in that same place.
I know that Trent tried to play this past weekend on Sunday. He said it was about 70 to 75%. How much of a risk was that really for him to go out there and do that and potentially like re-aggravating that? I know Kyla said like he's fine, there weren't any setbacks, but like how risky was that really?
I feel like in 13 years in his career, no one's going to know that answer better than Trent, right? I think he knows his body. He's had enough injuries to it that he really knows what he can and cannot do, at that point. But anytime you put somebody out on the field that's coming back from an injury, there's a risk to re-injury, or that they're doing something in a different way that causes them an injury somewhere else, right? They're kind of protecting it a little bit more, or they go into like fall and they're like, oh, I don't want to fall this way. So then they turn their bodies or do something that then injures something else. But I mean, clearly he was running like a freight train. His ankle looked okay to me. I think he was okay to be out there.
Yeah. So some news came out about Jason Verrett. I think he's quite a favorite for a lot of 49ers fans. He was released from the Texans, and then it was announced today that the 49ers worked him out. No news yet that he signed or anything. I kind of want to get both of your thoughts on Jason Verrett. Do you think, the 49ers should at least sign him to the practice squad, or, do you think the injury past is too much of a concern? How you guys kind of feel about Jason Verrett? And then Coach Desi, if you want to, kind of talk about Jason's, if Jason's injuries off the top, or, a little bit.
Yeah. Steph, do you want to tackle that first?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with Rob about this earlier, and of course, this was before the news of 49ers working him out came out. So I was just throwing out the idea, hey, like a lot of fans have been talking about this. Should the 49ers consider it? And it seems like they're at least considering it, right, based on the workout. So he's 32 years old. He hasn't played a game since week 1 of 2021. His last full season, which was with the 49ers, was in 2020. And even in that season, he missed weeks 1 and 2. So he's not foreign to injuries at all. And I'd be more concerned, though, with the fact that, one, there's not a lot of players who come back from the type of injuries that he's had, multiple injuries at this point, and are able to play at the same level they were playing before. So I kind of feel like what he's been able to do, or what he was able to do in 2020, for example, was kind of an anomaly, like personally. And so I think it would be hard to expect him to be able to do the same thing. Now, I don't know if his time with the Texans, which was just a month, and he was only on the practice squad, he wasn't called up for any games, if that should give us any indication on where he's at. But at the same time, I mean, the 49ers could have easily made a call to, DeMeco, anyone who they have familiarity with at the Texans, and been like, hey, like, what did you see out of Verrett? Like, is he moving well? Should we bring him in for a workout kind of thing? Okay, yeah, we'll bring him in. I mean, just to get some information on how he's looking. So maybe they felt good enough to like bring him in for a workout. But yeah, I would just wonder if it's worth getting excited for depth, for being on the practice squad. I wouldn't mind it, right? Like at that point, it's really just to have that veteran presence. Okay, if he did need to play or be called up to the 53, you wouldn't feel terrible about it because you more or less know what he does bring to the team. But yeah, realistically, like I truly don't know if it'll have any impact on the 49ers season this year.
Yeah, it's tough. His injuries, so he has had both knees ACL reconstructions, bilateral, both Achilles tendons, like both, like both legs. I mean, it is really tough to come back from that. I mean, everybody's looking at Aaron Rodgers and, oh my gosh, he's going to make a try to come back in December. But Aaron Rodgers had a very unique surgery. So yes, he had a repair of his Achilles tendon, but they utilized something called a suture tape. And this is a type of suture that reinforces the reconstruction. So it makes it a lot quicker to come back from and to rehab. And it's like having, what's a good way? I can't think of an analogy off the top of my head, but it really anchors this thing in. So even if there's a partial tear of the tendon, this thing is going to hold steady. So it won't completely, it's going to be really hard to completely rupture all the way through again. So he's got something different. Just fun fact, that's the same type of thing they did in Brock Purdy's surgery. So they use that same technology, that same suture tape. And that's why he was able to come back sooner and get back to the field and return to play. Jason Verrett had all these surgeries before that came out. Maybe this last Achilles tendon was done that way. I'd have to look that up. The news broke today. I didn't even know that we were going to talk about this tonight, so I didn't get a chance to look to see specifically. Just given the timeline of his return to play, I doubt that he did have that. So this is just if it's there to kind of help coach the secondary, like you said, Steph, bring that veteran experience, that mindset to them. Listen, we could definitely use some help in the secondary. And if that's all that he comes in for, air quotes, that's value added, especially depending on what the price point is that we can get him. We got a great deal in Chase Young. Maybe we can score another great deal here and still add value to our secondary.
Yeah. What Rob says here, and this is kind of where I was at with it, it's like, I love Jason Verrett, and I think, he brings all the great vibes. And, like you both said, I wouldn't mind it being on the practice squad for that, veteran leadership and, just kind of, be in those young guys' ear. But it's like, if the Texans got rid of it, cut him, I don't want to say got rid of, like that sounds so terrible. if the Texans released him, and, not to throw shade at the Texans, but they do not have near the talent, that the 49ers have on their team. So it's like, it's not like you have a team full of studs that you're releasing, Jason Verrett and keeping these guys. It's like, they don't have that, so it's like, well, if Jason Verrett wasn't good enough to make it, get pulled up onto their active roster and even play, and with, D'Amico being there, D'Amico knows him, so it's like, I just seems like, I don't know. I would feel like just ever since they released him yesterday, I've been thinking about it before the 49ers even worked him out. And that's what I kept coming back to. It's like, well, D'Amico released him. Like, why? Like, why then would the 49ers pick him up? Like, I get it, like what the chat's saying, in case of an emergency, break the glass. Like, I'm all for that. But I just wouldn't, get my hopes up or count on him being Jason Verrett that we once knew. And I remember when he last tore, that last injury that he got, like, I felt so terrible because it's like, oh my gosh, it's happening again to this guy. Like, by all accounts, the nicest guy, so great with the team, all this, like, such a stud, player, and just injury after injury after injury. And I just told myself, like, I just hope, that he doesn't come back for his own sake. Like, just don't keep doing it to yourself. It's like, could you imagine he worked himself back again from this injury and then gets back on the field and something freaking happens again? It's like, when is enough going to be enough? Like, when is the next injury going to be enough, right?
Well,
So I would just hate to see that.
I don't think he came back so he had his ACL reconstruction. He was just coming back and he tore the Achilles at like practice, he didn't even make it back. So we don't need another situation like that for sure. For his sake, listen, we're fans. We love him, right? We know what he was capable. We know what he looked like before all this happened. So in our hearts, none of us want to really say it, but but it's tough. It's tough. And so we love him just as much as we love to not watch him go through that again. So, hey, John, what's up? Thanks for the love. Appreciate you.
What's up, John? You have some stuff or?
No. I just based on that question and kind of didn't want to derail, but I was just wondering where the coach came from Coach Desi. Like, where?
I was wondering if someone would ever ask me that. I'm like, I'm just out here being called Coach Desi. I don't know if anybody's figured out why. Great question, Steph. So there's a couple reasons. One, I'm a track coach, but really what I do, for those of you guys who don't know who I am or what I do, I'm a physician assistant. I've been practicing medicine for over 20 years, ER, orthopedics, weight loss, and currently I own my own weight loss practice in Tampa. And so I feel like I'm better served being called a coach. I feel like I coach people to a better lifestyle, coach people to better health. And I think that's what medical practitioners really should be doing, is helping to coach them into getting away from medications and things if they can, and just help coach people to better health. So that's where it comes from. Thanks for asking. I was always like, I should send you a gift or something for just being able to ask that, because I was wondering when it was going to get there.
I was like over here, like, what is she coaching, like high school football or something? Like, she's doing something crazy. Like, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Listen, one day. So it's interesting. So last night I had my podcast. For those who don't know, it's Girlfriends in Football. Good luck finding it on YouTube, but you can find it anywhere you find a podcast. I interviewed my first flag football girl, a young lady that I've known since she was tiny. She's now playing flag football. And I mean, I just wish I had the opportunity to play flag when I was younger. And so I just tell her all the time, like, man, you put us on your shoulders when you're out there, because you got to ball out. And so she's a great girl, great talent. I interviewed her, and her mom's like, you should coach. And I'm like, don't tell me that. Do not tell me that, because, I'm crazy enough to start trying things. I got to get my boys out of the house first. But yeah, maybe one day I'll coach flag. That would be great.
That's awesome. Yeah,
that is really awesome.
Cool. But getting back to like the cornerback discussion we were just having, like, okay, I think like we all kind of have doubts about Jason Verrett being on this team or bringing him back in some capacity, even on the practice squad. But I think also because we're kind of waiting to see what happens with Samuel Womack and Darrell Luter, right? Like, both of those guys are in their 21-day window off of IR. So the 49ers have a decision to make with those guys as well. And so I kind of wonder if maybe the 49ers were looking into Verrett just based on either Womack and or Luter not coming back from their 21-day windows. But it seems like they've started practicing. So then at the same time, I don't know, maybe they're keeping their options open. But out of either one of those guys, and based on the injuries that they had, I think for Luter, it was it like a bruised knee or something like that? I might be getting confused.
Hyperextension, right? Was his
hyperextension? Okay. Yeah, someone had a bruise. That might have been Danny Gray that had the bruise.
Danny Gray, and then the hamstring, and I think Samuel Womack is the MCL, the medial collateral.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So based on their injuries and then both being in their 21-day window right now, like, is there one that you would feel a little bit better about, coming back from those injuries? Or is it kind of like, at this point, they should probably both be healthy. They're probably just as equally capable of coming back from those at this point?
Tough to say. Very tough to say. So the hyperextension injury, remember, that's the same injury that Lamar Jackson had with Baltimore last year, and he held out and the whole contract stuff. That was the injury he had, was a hyperextension injury. hyperextension injuries can really stress your ACL, PCL in the knees. So I was really concerned that, I don't know. And so what's Lamar doing this year? He's staying in the pocket a little bit more. Of course, they have a new OC and all that stuff, and all that matters. But you just wonder is there something that maybe they caught in an MRI that maybe he doesn't quite need surgery, but ... right? Same thing with an MCL strain. So an MCL strain, again, back to like kind of the ankle description, the outside part of your knee is the lateral, the inside part of your knee is the medial side. And so an MCL is that band of ligaments right there on the inside of the knee that helps prevent it from, clicking open this way. You can have different grades of it as well, just like a sprain. So grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. And so it goes anywhere from just a kind of a tweak all the way up to a full tear. So I'm not sure, again, we don't know what severity this is. I would guess it's maybe a little bit worse than a grade 1. So it's maybe a little more than tweak. Maybe it's not quite. If it was a full tear, there's usually more treatment that needs to be done. He'd probably be out for several months, but it's really hard to say. They don't release this kind of information, but one would hope that, he's progressing. And I think tough to say. And they're both probably 50-50. I can't really say it's more promising for this over that.
Yeah. Another recent injury and kind of, opening up a roster spot for maybe one of those that you just talked about. That's Nick Zakelj with the torn bicep. You kind of want to talk to us a little bit about that. I know Shanahan said that he kind of just wasn't feeling right. They took him in, got, I guess, an MRI or whatever test you used to find out that, and, saw that it was torn and he would be going in for surgery and on season-ending IR.
Yeah, so there's different insertions for the biceps. There's 2 different heads that are attached up at the shoulder. And so depending on which one's torn, usually, they don't necessarily, if it was just you and I out on the street, there's certain ones that you just don't even repair. You're just like, well, you can survive without it. But I believe it's 30% is what you lose in rotation. So if you miss that as someone that you're in that kind of position where you need full power, you do need to get that repaired and get that fixed. So that's it. He's done. You and I, they'd be like, well, you're not a football player. You can still put your pants on. You can still drive a car. You're going to be okay. So yeah, that needs to get repaired. He'll be out. That's unfortunate.
How long is normally, do you know, like the rehab for that? I know they say, oh, he should be back next season, but of course they don't tell us he'll be ready by the beginning of next season, the middle of next season. It's going to take a full year. Like how, about typical.
He should for sure be back by next season. I don't foresee any issues with that. It's not some instability issue or anything like that. It just has to wait to scar in. It'll be a good, 3 months of scarring in. They'll start some gentle range of motion and then progress them from there.
Okay. Steph, you have anything else?
Oh,
you're muted.
Hey, sorry. I had a question on Brock Purdy, and I'm sure you've talked about this, like the same thing tirelessly. But because of the bye week, and I heard that Brock Purdy didn't throw at all, like during the bye week, it seemed like that was very intentional, right? To just like rest that arm. It'd been the first time it'd been rested since he started throwing, since he was coming back from that surgery, right? How much do you think like that rest like really does help like a player like him coming off of that surgery? Like, do you think it was starting to get tired? Like, is it possible for it to like start to get tired again after a lot of work, after so long of rehabbing and not really like having that range of motion and all those things for a long time?
Yeah, I'm sure he kind of went from 0 to 60, right? Like there really wasn't like this gentle progression. Surgery back when it was first getting done was delayed by a whole like almost month, right? So that already took time off of him coming back in the summer. And then as soon as he came in the summer, it was like boom, 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 boom. The thing is that because the iteration of the surgery that he had is so new, I think the first data started to come out in 2016. And there's not a lot of data. In 2020, we had COVID. All the ORs got shut down. Only emergency cases were being done. So take out that whole year, there was nothing done. And even 2021, there was some wonkiness. So since 2016 to now, and then add in, there's studies done, sure, but how many of them are on professional athletes? And now you're looking at even smaller numbers. So there is a very small subset of information that we have as to what this will even look like. So the practitioner in me was geeking out because I'm like, this is so fascinating from like a medical standpoint. The fan in me is like, I don't want to be fascinated. I want to know what I want to know. So I think there's value for Brock for the bye in two regards. One, the arm for sure, but also the concussions that, the back-to-back head blows and things that were happening, the lack of protection for him in those last couple games leading up to the bye. In my heart, I feel like there was still a little bit of some issues maybe from the concussion. Again, I've said this on a different podcast. We'll never know because it's only something that he would know. Only Brock Purdy would know, because you can essentially pass, a lot of all the workup and the clearances that have to be done to return to the field. But if there's a part of it that's just subjective. So if he's not admitting certain things or the full extent of certain things, you can slide a little bit through that. So I feel like there's a little bit of all. I think they just collectively, they all needed a rest, right? We were just kind of not looking sharp out there. So I was thankful for it when it came. But to answer your question, I definitely think there's value. He's only been out of surgery still, 9 months?
It's crazy.
8 months. It's been 8 months. 8 months.
Yeah. When I saw that throw to Kittle, and we were just talking about it before we went live, right? I was like, man, I think his arm got a little more juice after that bye week.
Yes.
That was a good throw.
Yep. I told you guys I was there, and that thing came out and fast, and I was like, woo, holding my breath, making sure, oh, please let us pick, let George get that one up. And he did. That balled out, went right to the end zone.
Yeah, that was awesome. You kind of touched on it right there. The last injury, related thing I have was Purdy and the concussions. And I kind of just wanted you to talk a little bit about, that second impact syndrome. And, because that next game that Purdy, right after clearing the concussion protocol, his last step on Saturday, he played that next game on Sunday. And, I know it's a few weeks now, but if you guys remember back, Purdy did hit his head in that game, and he, there was the camera, of course, is going to zoom on him because now it's paying attention to everything that he's doing, right? And he grabs the side of his helmet, and I'm like, okay, that just doesn't seem right. Like, if it didn't hurt, like, you wouldn't be grabbing the sides of your head, right? Like, something didn't feel right. And so it's kind of scary because, like you said, and I've heard that multiple times before, is like that these guys, are able to, they have to answer the question. So if they are not being honest, they are able to get through parts of that concussion protocol. And then how long does that normally, like, okay, so, that whether it's the second impact syndrome or, just another concussion or whatever, like, how long does that normally, so say he went the next 2 games without it hitting his head and then hits his head. Well, is that too much time for it to be second impact syndrome? You see what I'm saying? Like, how long does that kind of time frame to where, okay, obviously it's not okay if he hits his head again, but, that it would be cleared off of that and just a new concussion, I guess.
So the time frame between the 2 concussions just means that you haven't completely resolved your symptoms from the first one before the second one happens. So that's the difference. That's the time. So there really isn't one, right? If you had a massive concussion and you've, 2 weeks later you have another concussion, that's not enough time because you're likely not done with the first one. So that's what that is. For Brock Purdy, and it's weird when I looked up the data on that. So for second impact syndrome, there's not actually a lot of data on it because it's not super duper common. It doesn't seem to be, just severe concussions that it occurs in, it can be more of the mild ones as well, but it is super duper rare. And I would think, given that I'm a general football fan, I watched the Dolphins game where Tua went out, and that was the scariest thing I think I've ever seen, because as a practitioner, again, my background is also ER, emergency medicine. And when I saw him, I was like, there's no way that guy's going back on the field. And I'm like, okay, he went out for the halftime and then he came back. Literally, I shut my TV off. I'm like, I will not watch this. That man is going to die out there. And then, he came back not long. So if there was ever going to be a second impact syndrome or second impact syndrome, I would say that it would have been with Tua. Again, it could be in mild ones, but that was probably the scariest thing that I've ever seen. For Brock, I was more worried about just post-concussion syndrome, and that can linger. That can linger for weeks, even months, and it's just persistent symptoms that continue down the road. So every hit, think of a bruise. This is what I tell patients all the time. So if I were, I never want to say if I were to punch you, right? But if someone got punched, there would be a mark, right? A bruise, because that's blood vessels are broken and blood is traps under the skin, and that becomes a bruise. That's what happens to our brains when we get concussed. So it's a forceful back and forth, and our brain kind of sloshes around, hits our skull. And that's, the brain is kind of softer. And so it can create like a bruise on the brain. And so that takes, how long does it take for a bruise to heal on your skin, right? I mean, it has stages. It goes from that deep purple to like the green to the yellow. So it takes time, and same thing with the brain. So you just got to be very cautious with that. And even though the NFL has come a long way, there's a lot of safety things that they put in. They have good measures. They have a third-party neurosurgeon that comes in, or neurosurgeon that comes in and make sure that they clear them. But again, unless they're demonstrating severe neurological deficits, it's really hard sometimes to pick up on the little bit of nuances. So it's tough out there. Football is no powder puff sport. There is some serious aggression going on, and lots of hard hits, and they're doing the best they can to protect them. But sometimes it also depends on how forward the athlete is coming with their symptoms.
Could you elaborate a bit on the post-concussion syndrome? Because I don't know if I had really heard about that too much before. And I've heard some people say that, Brock Purdy's interceptions, even beyond the game in which I forgot when was it the Browns game that he had that first hit? Or was it
the Minnesota game?
Minnesota. Okay. So Minnesota. And then he proceeded the following game to also throw interceptions, which everyone is like, he doesn't do this. Like, this is so uncharacteristic. Like, do you feel like that had anything to do with the concussion he had suffered the game before, even though he was cleared? Like, is it possible that, like, even a week later, it can impact, like, your cognitive abilities and things like that, and decision making?
Yes. So just black and white answer, yes.
Okay.
There are cognitive tests that they will have ran on him that he has to pass, right? So, during the game, they're going to ask him things about what quarter are we in, what stadium are we at, who had the ball last, like they'll ask questions like that, so that, he has to quickly respond to those. But then there's also a specific medical test that they'll give them that will iron out whether or not there's little deficits that are happening. They'll give these athletes the test, prior to the season to kind of get a baseline, and then they'll match that up with what's happened since the injury. And so that's fantastic. But if you're not exhibiting, if it's so mild that it's not being picked up on that, and by the way, the research on it it's not 100%, it's not even 90%. I mean, I think it's somewhere around 70%. So, I mean, there's still some gray area there. And again, if the athlete's not telling you, hey, I'm kind of waking up with this dull headache, or there's just this weird thing with my eyesight that isn't enough to like throw off the exam, but something's there, or I'm aging, so I'll tell you, it's like the walking into a room and where did I put my keys? Or walking into a room, like, why am I in this room?
That's
Those
me every day.
right. Little things like that maybe no one else picks up on except for the people that are super duper close to him. And so I would say that, yes, it's possible. Given what I've seen of Brock Purdy all that time, I would give him the benefit of the doubt that there was still a little something. I can't base that on anything medical. That's just a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I would, we'll probably never know. The only person that truly will
Right.
ever know that is going to be Brock Purdy, maybe his mom, maybe his fiance, people that really, really know him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. I know this is kind of going to cut off your face real quick, but Nick, our friend from across the pond says, in rugby, if a player suffers several concussions in a short period, the governing body literally shuts the player down until neuro tests prove the player has recovered. Could NFL end up doing this? And underneath that, he says, players in rugby have been stopped from playing for up to a year.
Wow.
That's fantastic. I don't know. I don't know if the NFL is there yet. My hope is the more research, the more that we understand about things like CTE, concussions, and how the sport impacts those things, I would hope that they would be more apt to do that. However, it's complicated, right? Because there's contracts. Players want to play. Money's tied up in it. There's just a lot going on, and I don't know the answer to this. But in anything that's non-football, things like rugby, even high school players, and just to you and I, a bad car accident, we can get an awful concussion from it. There's things and recommendations that we're going to give us as lay people that may be a little bit different than the NFL, knowing that people are kind of signing up for a violent sport and they kind of know what injuries are possible. So, I mean, I'm a healthcare provider. I always want to protect people to a fault, maybe overly so. But there's got to be some agreement on both parties as to, how far they want to take that. But brain is very tough. There's so much more for us to learn.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, we can't diagnose through imaging. You can't do an MRI and know that they have a concussion. That's not diagnosable on any kind of imaging. CTE, you can't diagnose that.
Yeah, that's so scary.
So there's just too much left to learn before we can really make some decisions that will be helpful.
Yeah. That's all the medical, side of stuff I have. Steph, I don't know if you had anything else.
No, I was good. This has been fantastic, though, as far as
Yeah.
like injuries, and I've learned so much.
I love being on
I know.
here. It's fantastic. You guys are great. I love watching you guys from the sideline. You guys do a great job on your Twitter accounts. I'm always like, wow, everybody's so on it. I feel I'm so delayed on everything. So last one to tweet something out, but
I appreciate it. So let's kind of get into the games a little bit. I know, Coach Desi, you said you were there at the game against Jacksonville. Even the show that me and Steph did before the Jacksonville game, we weren't expecting that the 49ers going to roll in there and just completely handle business the way they did. Of course, you're always hoping, right? But we thought it was going to be a lot closer game, but it was great to see, man, like the offense showed up, the defense, the best outing from the defense that we've seen so far this season. Special teams, great. The coaching staff was on it, great. Kind of just your overall, sum up what you guys thought about the game, how you guys were feeling watching it after. I hope that we're feeling a lot better after this week than we had the last month.
Oh, this was great. So Mom and I take a trip every year. That's our mother-daughter trip to a 49ers game. So Mom was with me, and it was just cruddy weather for her. I felt so bad. It was just misting and cold, and cold for people from Tampa. So, but the game itself was fantastic, and faithful showed up. There was just red all throughout the stands. At the end of the third quarter, pretty much Jacksonville fans were rolling out left and right in droves. It was a fun game to be at, to watch Brock Purdy throw to the end zone with Brandon Ayuk catching the first touchdown that we got in that game, to the bomb he threw to George Kittle, to watching Debo come in on the jet sweep and get into the end zone. It was just fantastic to even watch the defensive plays, watch them huddle up in the end zone and do their celebration was fantastic. I even love that, watching Ambry Thomas, get up and try to take the ball into the end zone. And even Kyle was so excited that they all ran onto the field. It was like watching this come together, the Bosa moment with Chase Young, just all of it. It was like a movie right in front of me. And I was just so happy to be there with my mom, watching it all unfold right in front of me. It was great.
I love that.
Yeah, they needed it. There's a lot of good takeaways from that game, right? And it just felt like the 49ers that we were accustomed to watching in weeks 1 through 5, right? So they're still not perfect. They're still not at that week 5 one. That week 5 game was probably the best game they had played so far this season. And so they're trying to get back to that. I think they will get back to that maybe this Sunday, right? But I think it just shows that they got the wake-up call they needed. They know they're still that same team who could play at this level. I feel like on Sunday they were reminded of that, right? Like if we're just on our P's and Q's, if we just play to the best of our abilities, no one can beat us. It doesn't matter what they come in there and try to do. If we know ourselves and we play our best, then no one can beat us. So I feel like it was great to see the adjustments that were made during the bye week. Again, I also loved seeing Chase Young out there, and he made a huge impact on this game. While he didn't do a lot himself, he had half a sack, right? But just seeing what he was able to do, getting so close to Trevor Lawrence, flushing him out of the pocket, little things. I feel like it opened things up for Bosa. I think it opened things up for Hargrave, Armstead as well. And I think we'll just continue to see that throughout the season. I also loved having Trent and Debo back because I think this team on offense, they really missed those guys a lot. And you see the run game got going again, and that just helped the offense look balanced. And lo and behold, they're scoring 30 points again, So I think those guys were key for the offense. And then the last thing I'll say about the defense is that, I did I don't want to say I made fun of the fact that, people wanted Steve Wilkes on the sideline. Okay, maybe I did a little bit.
Did.
But after seeing it and after seeing the interactions that he was having with players, and those are just the ones we saw. Those are just the ones that they showed on the broadcast of him talking to Charvarius Ward, of him having that what looked like a really special moment between him and Ambry Thomas. I was like, man, you know what? Yeah, that right there. I mean, that stuff makes a difference, I think, to the players. Clearly, I feel like they were one of the driving forces of Kyle Shanahan saying, you know what, these guys want this. They're used to that. They kind of feed off of it too. So I liked it after seeing it. While I don't think it makes a difference in Wilkes's play calling ability or anything like that, I think it's cool to see that interaction with the players.
Yeah, I feel like I need to confess. I need to get this off my chest. I did tweet out in the middle of, I can't remember if it was the Cleveland game or the Minnesota game. I did totally tweet. You guys can look it up. I'm gonna need Wilkes to get up out the booth and be down on the field. And not necessarily that I meant that permanently, but I'm he needs to be pulling somebody by their face mask and be finish the tackle. You need to tackle. So I was just kind of like, get down out of the booth, say what you got to say. You can go right on back up there if you want to. So I just felt like I needed to get that out there, because then it was so polarized. It was either you were for him to stay in the booth or you were, for him to be on the field. And I don't think that it's so black and white. It's like, if they have an internal conversation where they felt like that was going to be valuable, hey, let's try it out, because what's happening right now wasn't working. So yeah, I'm all for trying. If it works, great. If it doesn't, go back in the booth. Because like you, Steph, I agree. It doesn't necessarily change what he's going to call or who he is as a coach. And if he's more comfortable up there and is going to do better calling from there, I'd rather him be there. But someone needs to be in these guys' faces and like either pumping them up or or correcting things. And I know that's the positional coaches, but if that's not getting done, that's the kind of person I am. I'm gonna be in your face. That's my boys. I'm gonna be like, why is your bedroom like this anymore? You need to clean.
She's coaching at home. I loved seeing those moments between him and, like you said, between Ambry. Like, if he wasn't down there, like, we know everything that Ambry's been through, like such a up and down battle, to like losing his starting spot, to most people thinking he wasn't even going to make the roster, and we come out of the bye. And this is one of the things I want to ask you guys your thoughts on. They line up and Ambry's starting outside and Lenore's starting in the slot. We hardly saw Oliver maybe 4 snaps in cleanup duty after the starters have been, rested or sat. But it's like, had Ambry, did all that, it's like he needed that from Wilks at that time. Like, his probably confidence was down in the freaking dirt as far as you could possibly go. Yeah. And after making that play, and I feel so bad that his touchdown got called back, but it's like still such a great play. And what he was supposed to then call Wilks on the phone up there so that Wilks can say, "Hey, great job, Ambry, you did it," like, no, so that was my whole thing. And people kept saying, like, making me try to feel stupid because, like, oh, grown men need another man on the side of the field to bring them energy and to. Well, no, but like when you do something good, you want somebody to tell you, right? When you're playing like shit, you need somebody to tell you the same, And Wilks can't just call down. Yeah, you can call up and down, but it's so much easier if he just walks over. He needs to talk to all the linebackers at once, about what he saw or what they saw. Okay, he can walk over and talk to them all. What are they supposed to call him on freaking speakerphone? Like, it just doesn't work, And like, you don't have enough time to be calling and doing all that shit. When you can just walk over, change, okay, we need to do this, blah, 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 and it's done, So that's where I was all for. But, since I didn't play football and Steph had to try to make me feel stupid, then, I had to put my Wilks feelings aside.
Mariah.
She tried to call me out. She tried to call me out now. But no, I mean, I do feel like, again, like, I don't think it was going to change the play calling or anything like that, but I clearly the players did kind of need this. They needed to have a face to go to on the sideline, and like what Debbie says here, I really do believe Wilks being on the sideline to be face to face is positive for the players. Like, yeah, clearly, like, they're the ones that needed it, and I think because they were kind of used to that. Like, the entire time that Kyle has been the coach, they've had a defensive coordinator that's been on the sideline. And, I was also worried too, because I was like, Wilks is not going to be one of those guys that's going to be like, rah, rah, he's not going to like cheer you on like that. But I did see some smiles a couple times, like he broke a smile. So even just that, right? Like seeing him, break character, so to speak, like, and just getting comfortable and happy about like what was transpiring on the field. Yeah, players got to feel good about that. And I think that helps them play harder, right? So while I'm also like, they shouldn't need that to play better. And I don't think that's all it was on Sunday. Like, obviously they made other adjustments that worked, but I think in conjunction with everything that we saw, it was nice. It was nice to see. So there, Mariah.
He's newer too. So maybe this isn't maybe it was just like, it's sort of like team building, right? Like he's there for even just a couple games and then he can go back up in the booth because maybe there was just some sort of reassurance. Who knows, right? These are all things that we're never going to know. We're not on the sideline, but whatever it was. I have a question. Did you guys, because I didn't go back and watch the game yet from the television, and watching at a game, I totally have ADD and do all these things and look at people and talk to people. So I'm not constantly paying attention. Did they return? Because you guys probably remember, I think it was Nick Bosa was being interviewed and he was talking about how they are used to a 4-man front, right? And they were no longer, they were kind of getting away from that. And it made it sound sort of like he wasn't a fan, right? It kind of, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's just kind of the feeling I got. Did they return to some of that in this game? Because I feel like I saw some moments where there was 4-man.
Yeah, I mean, they're
I think
blitzing
so.
less, and that's really, I think, what was kind of the difference in the scheme that maybe like Wilkes was trying to do, whereas like they weren't ever doing that before. So I'm trying to find, like, I don't think I retweeted it or anything, but I literally just saw like the numbers for the blitz rate. Oh, I probably bookmarked it so I could pull it up really quick.
I was just curious.
So
I hadn't heard anybody. Yeah, I hadn't heard anybody talk about it, so I was like, oh, I'm going to ask the ladies tonight when I see them. So figured out that maybe they just were starting to return back to things that were more familiar, and that just, you know.
Yeah, that too. Like I said, I think it's a accumulation of a lot of different things that they did that got them back to looking like, you know, the same defense that we know and love. So yeah, their defensive blitz rates from weeks 1 through 8 were 27.7, right? So that's a lot. And then in week 10, just 14%. So yeah, that was like one of the adjustments. Shout out to Akash for tweeting that out a little bit ago.
Which is really interesting because Trevor Lawrence, I kind of really expected, my score prediction was like 30-24. I kind of thought they'd probably get away from doing a couple things and get away with something on us, but it was impressive. I was here for it. I was thankful for it.
Yeah, it was awesome. Miss Debbie, thank you very much. We appreciate you. All right. So,
yeah.
Huh?
I was going to say Tampa game's coming up.
Yep. We're going to get out of here shortly, but I do want to get your guys' thoughts on the Tampa game. I'm super excited for this one. And I'm even more excited to have Chase Young and to be having, you know, them go against Baker, like the whole college thing, the planting of the flag that happened with Bosa the last time he met up with Baker. So I'm all for that drama. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't say, like, of course I don't hate Baker. Like, I have no personal, you know, feelings about him, but I am glad that he got out of Cleveland because I was sick of seeing those damn commercials. And I just think, like, he's just like I don't want to say a head case because that sounds so rude, but I feel like he's just I don't know, like a goofy guy. I don't know, a freaking goofball. So maybe he just needs to get, you know, sacked a couple times. Who knows? Maybe. But yeah, I think that I have no worry about the Buccaneers whatsoever. I probably have too much confidence in the 49ers right now after, you know, what had just recently happened, but I'm just not worried about them. Like, of course they have great, we know, you know, their wide receivers are great. But if the quarterback is constantly on his ass and can't get him the ball, there's not really, they're not going to be great. So that's where I'm at with it. Kind of give me how you guys feeling about this Tampa Bay matchup.
Yeah, so actually, like, I found it interesting that Tampa Bay has the 5th lowest sack percentage. So it's close to 5%, and that's pretty good. And that's with them like passing the ball quite a bit. I believe I saw earlier it's like 60 something percent of the time they're passing the ball rather than running. So they kind of make themselves one dimensional, like voluntarily, which, you know, you would normally think, hey, like that's great. They did half of our job for us. But like, you know, you mentioned the wide receivers that they have, obviously really talented. Baker Mayfield's not getting sacked as often as you would think, given how much they throw the football. So that's something to be not weary about, but just like something to keep in mind. Maybe like don't expect that it'll be another sack party, but at the same time, like I'm just going to keep reiterating this. Like if the 49ers play on both sides of the ball, if they play that at their best, like no one's going to beat them and they're going to find it very hard to beat them. Right. So I think Tampa Bay is one of those teams where you should be able to win as long as you play your game. Now, like Eagles in a few weeks, that's a different discussion. Right. But, at the Bucks, you should be able to handle business against them. Not to say that it's going to be easy, because I'm always like, you got to respect your opponent. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not playing the game. I can,
Exactly.
I can underestimate them if I want. So, I think, the 49ers should be able to win this game pretty handily if they take care of business.
Yeah, it's at home. They're hungry to get another win, another W in Levi's. So, and this is when Brock Purdy showed out last year against a Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
So I really feel like he's going to feel energized. It's going to be just just the same energy in Jacksonville, but 3 times more, just because it's at home. They got the boom box back. They got Trent back. They got Debo back. Let's go, right? Like Mike Evans is great. I live in Tampa Bay. My best friend is a big Bucks fan. She's on the podcast with me, and we talked about this. Unfortunately, the Bucks just can't get anything going. They'll take 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I mean, it's just hot and cold, hot, cold. Baker has tried. He has, come out of the pocket, try to make things happen. Sometimes that goes right into an interception that goes against him. So, I feel confident coming into this. I just hope we're not overconfident, but we should be able to get this job done. And I still think it'll be Brock 30.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm surprised, that makes sense that I wasn't sure, obviously about how much they throw and, all that. But I did know that their running back White, like he looked like he was promising last season, and I know that I drafted him like on one of my fantasy teams, and it's like, what the hell's going on with him? Like it would seem that if you're having trouble getting the ball to your wide receivers through your quarterback, that you would kind of get the run game going, but it doesn't seem Tampa Bay knows anything about getting the run game going. So that might be part of Tampa Bay's struggles, because on the season he has 429 yards. Like that just seems.
But and I know this because he's on my fantasy team. He's still producing, one way or another. He's putting up good numbers. I think it's mostly because he's catching balls out of the backfield. So that was something like earlier when I was talking to Rob, I was like, that's something to keep an eye on. Like they might try some screens here and there. They're gonna try to get the ball out quick out of Baker's hands. And so I think Rachaad White will continue to like stay involved in their game plans. So, but the 49ers have, Warner, Greenlaw, they have an answer for that, right? So again, if they're on their game, like you could potentially take White out of it, right?
Yeah. I think Mike Evans is the biggest weapon that we need to be concerned about, because they could have a crap game and then all of a sudden a bomb goes to Mike Evans, and it's just like, well,
they need to have like Tashawn Gibson like
her
over the top.
Thing probably died. Remember, she said she had about an hour left on battery.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's about an hour.
So she said she'll pop in if I'm back on her phone.
Okay.
So.
There you go. Right, but for Evans, I would hope they like have Tashawn Gibson like over the top, just making sure nothing gets past him.
Yeah, what I was gonna say about Evans, it's crazy that it doesn't matter. Like, what is it, 6 or 7 or 8 seasons he's gone with like over 1,000 yards? Like, it doesn't matter who his quarterback is, what scheme, who his coaches are, like nothing. He finds a way to somehow produce. Like it's crazy.
Yeah,
your laptop died. I take it.
we figured it was your like battery that.
Like we kept her too long.
Hey, it was actually rather accurate as to how long I had left on there.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
So we're about to get out of here. Just real quick, I don't know, Coach Desi, if you do score predictions, but we do. So, Steph, what is your score prediction this week?
So I'm going to say 31-17. I think, Brock Purdy's still gonna have a good day. I know the Bucks blitz a lot, but Brock Purdy plays well against the blitz, so I think they're gonna be able to put up points once again, 31-17.
I say
Coach Desi?
37-10. I overestimated Jacksonville.
Woo!
To do that with Tampa. 37-10.
Right. Nice.
I love it. And I'm sticking with mine. You guys know I stick with the same one all week. 31-6. Screw them. They're not scoring a touchdown. I think our defense is going to show up again. I don't care what stats Steph wants to give me that they're not going to get that much sacks. They're getting there. It's going to be a race to the quarterback. Planting that flag on Baker. I'm all
There
for
we
it,
go.
like I said.
Mariah, I appreciate that about you, the anti-stats girl. I love it. Stats don't tell the picture. I can be on that train. I can be on that train.
And for what it's worth, Mariah, like I do hope your prediction is right. Like
I know you do. Coach Desi, we appreciate you so much for coming on with us. We definitely got to do this again. Let the people know real quick where to find you. I know you say you can't find it on YouTube, but you can because I already did. So let them know where to find you.
So my podcast is Girlfriends in Football, and I'm anywhere you can find podcasts. It's much easier there, but I am on YouTube as well. We do live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come check us out next Wednesday. We are a rowdy bunch. And I'm also on Twitter and Instagram as Coach_Desi on Twitter and Coach Desi on Instagram.
There you have it. Steph, what you got going on?
Well, tomorrow, as I do every Friday, I have my preview show with Lori Fitzpatrick. I'll have to poke a little fun at her for the Jags losing. She's a Jags fan, so I'm sure we'll lead the episode with that. But aside from that, I have my post game show on Sunday, and then we start the cycle all over again for the week. So yeah, excited about that. Hopefully, we're talking about a win next week.
Yes.
Yep, I agree. You guys know me. This is my last show of the week, so I am done. Next week, I think, though, is Thanksgiving. Correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
So I'm not sure when we'll be doing our show. We'll
talk.
sometime. Yep. So we'll see you guys sometime. Keep an eye out. Again, Coach Desi, appreciate you so much for everything, for all the knowledge you gave us. It's been great. Steph, you're wonderful as always. Chat, we love you. Much love. Everybody stay safe. We're out of here.
Thank you.